Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to Aussie Fish Keeping. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at 7 of the best nano schooling fish. So all 7 of these species are obviously compatible in a nano aquarium and they do all school. So you're going to want to keep them in groups of around 6 to 8 fish. But without any further ado, let's just jump straight into today's video with the first fish on our list. So as for the first fish today, we actually have a super cool top-dwelling fish. We have hatchet fish. So there's obviously a variety of different hatchet fish out there, although I'd say the most common are silver hatchet fish and marbled hatchet fish. I don't think you can get too many more species in Australia. I think those are the main ones that you can get here. So as for water parameters for your hatchet fish, they do like a pH of around 6 to 6.8 and they like a temperature anywhere between 24 to 27 degrees Celsius. So as for the diet for these guys, because they are a top-dwelling fish, it's best to feed them flake foods or floating pellet foods. But as well, it's always great to feed them live foods. So top-dwelling live foods like baby brine shrimp or live mosquito larvae are 2 great options to feed them. As for tank setting, you're going to want to make sure you have a lid on your aquarium. So obviously being a top-dwelling fish, if they do get spooked, they will jump and they may just jump straight out of your aquarium if you don't have a lid. And then on top of that, you want to provide them with plenty of swim space. So you don't want to clutter the aquarium too much with aquarium plants. Although in saying that, floating plants with long roots like frog bit or red root floaters are great plants to keep in there, just because they will go and hide in those roots if they do feel stressed. And then as for tank mates for these guys, you don't want to keep them with any nippy fish whatsoever. So you can get away with keeping them with species such as Rasboras, Tetras, cherry shrimp, and even some Corydoras catfish. Obviously, there's a variety of other fish you can keep them with as well, like Autossinkless and other peaceful fish like that. But with that being said, the hatchet fish is definitely a great nano schooling fish and I would highly recommend them. Moving on to the next species on our list, I don't think this is going to come as a surprise to anyone.
Here in the wild,
there is hundreds of different species out there. Some are a lot larger, like Congo tetras, although obviously you can get your nano species like cardinal tetras or neon tetras. So on top of schooling, they will shoal with other species as well. So if you keep them in there with barbs or rasboras, you may find they all form one big school together and they cruise around the tank. As for water parameters for your tetras, you're going to want a pH of around 6.8 to 7.5 and a temperature of around 22 to 26 degrees Celsius. Obviously, these parameters can vary depending on what species you get, but for the most part, most tetras live in the same water parameters. As for diet, you do want to vary your tetra's diet a lot. So obviously the 3 staples would be frozen food, dry food, and live food. They will eat all sorts of live foods, so things like baby brine shrimp, black worms, and live mosquito larvae. Obviously, there's a bunch of dry foods and frozen foods out there as well that they will eat. And then as for tank setting, you do want to keep these guys with a lot of swim space as well. So even though they do like a lot of swim space, it is definitely beneficial to throw in some aquarium plants as long as they aren't taking up too much space in your aquarium. And then as for tank mates, tetras are notoriously peaceful. So if you are keeping a smaller species of tetra, you can definitely get away with cherry shrimp, rasboras, Corydoras catfish, and barbs. And again, there's obviously hundreds of other peaceful fish that you can keep them with as well. However, I definitely do think tetras are another great nano schooling fish and I would highly recommend them. Moving on to the next fish on our list, we actually have a super cool Australian native. We have blue eyes. So blue eyes or blue eye rainbow fish are obviously a super common Australian native fish. They come in a variety of different colors and they are super beautiful. On top of that as well, obviously they do school and they do great in smaller size setups. So not only are blue eyes super beautiful, but they're super tolerant of low temperatures. So in Australia, you can actually keep these guys outside. As long as your pH is around 6 to 7.5 and your temperature is anywhere between 15 to 24 degrees Celsius. Obviously, you'd prefer to keep them in that higher temperature range, although they can definitely thrive in really low temperatures. As for diet, you definitely want to vary their diet up, and things like live foods, frozen foods, and dry foods all make great additions. As for tank setting, again, it's super vital you give these guys plenty of swim space. So this swim space is going to give them an area to show off to females, and they do just prefer having a little bit of room to swim around in. And then as for tank mates, these guys are so peaceful, so you can keep them with things like bristlenose catfish, Corydoras catfish, tetras, rasboras, barbs, Danos, guppies, and all sorts of other Australian native fish. So with that said, the Blueeye or Blueeye rainbow fish is another great nano schooling fish, and I would definitely recommend these guys. Moving on to the next group of fish on our list, we have another super common fish. We have rasboras. So rasboras are super similar to tetras, however they do grow a lot smaller. So obviously you can get hundreds of different varieties of these guys as well, and all of them are suited for nano style setups. So as for your water parameters, you're going to want a pH of around 6.8 to 7.5 and a temperature anywhere between 22 to 28 degrees Celsius. So because these guys have a super small mouth, you do want to feed them a relatively small diet. So things like live baby brine shrimp and crushed up dry foods are two main staples in their diet. As well as that, if you do have a sponge filter in their aquarium, they may actually find all sorts of infusoria in there, and they will eat that as well. As for tank setting, these guys are a little bit different to the tetras, and they do like a really cluttered aquarium. So if you can throw in as many aquarium plants as possible, they will really appreciate that. Obviously, you do want to give them a little bit of swim space, but they aren't too fussy at all, and they will definitely hide if you give them hiding spots. And then as for tank mates, these guys can go with all sorts of tetras, endlers, and even cherry shrimp. So with that said, the rasboras are another great nano schooling fish that you can get for your aquarium. Moving on to the next fish on our list, we have a super small catfish species. We have Pyycory. So Pyycories are one of my favorite fish. They are a super cool little fish, and they do really help keep your aquarium clean. So because these guys are a bottom dwelling fish, they will actually kick up a lot of that debris and detritus that's at the bottom of your aquarium, and that makes it easier for your filter to suck up. So for that reason, they are just a really good fish to add into your aquarium anyway. But as for water parameters for these guys, you're going to want a pH of around 6.5 to 7.5 and a temperature anywhere between 22 to 26 degrees Celsius. As for diet, these guys really do love algae wafers and other sinking pellets like that. But on top of that, relatively large sinking frozen foods like frozen bloodworms and frozen blackworms both make great additions into their diet. And obviously live blackworms are another great thing to add in there every now and then as well. As for tank setting, these guys love bushy plants and hiding spots. So they won't really hide in your aquarium all that often. And there is actually a pygmy species of Corydoras that's quite a mid-water swimmer. I forgot what the name is, but I'll pop a picture of them up. So those guys definitely don't need too many plants in there whatsoever. But as for your other two species like your Corydoras pygmaeus and your Rasbora cories, so not only will those bushy plants provide them a place to hide, but you may actually have some breeding going on in there, and it's really beneficial to keep them with it. As for tank mates, you can keep your Pyycory with all sorts of guppies, endlers, tetras, rasboras, barbs, Danos, and even bristlenose. So Pyycory are definitely another great nano schooling fish that you can get for your aquarium. Moving on to the next fish on our list, we have another catfish, but we actually have a sucking mouth catfish. We have Autossinkless. So Autossinkless are another really beneficial fish to add into your aquarium. So these guys won't actually kick up a lot of that debris, but they will eat a lot of the algae off your surfaces. So they won't eat things like blackbeard algae or hair algae, but brown and green surface algae they will definitely tackle, and they will do a super great job at it. So as for your water parameters for your Autossinkless catfish, you're going to want a pH of around 6 to 7.5 and a temperature anywhere between 21 to 26 degrees Celsius. So obviously your Autossinkless catfish will eat all sorts of algae wafers and other sinking pellets like that. They won't so much eat live foods, but if you do throw in some frozen blackworms or frozen bloodworms, they may actually eat those. Another great thing you can add in for your Autossinkless is all sorts of zucchini and green beans and other green vegetables like that. Vegetables are definitely a great thing to add into their diet every now and then. As for tank setting, your Autossinkless really love a lot of plants in there, and you can even throw in a few botanicals. So not only will the botanicals create really nice black water, but they're also going to develop a biofilm, and your Autossinkless catfish can actually eat that throughout the day. As for your tank mates for these guys, you're going to want to keep them with relatively peaceful fish, so things like tetras, rasboras, endlers, and guppies all make great tank mates for them. With that said, Autossinkless catfish would definitely make another great addition as a schooling fish into your nano aquarium. And then moving on to the final fish on our list, we have one of my favorite fish. We have Danos. So Danos or zebra fish are a super fun little fast moving aquarium fish. As for your water parameters, they're really easy to maintain. A pH of around 7 to 7.8 is great. And your temperature should be around 20 to 26 degrees Celsius. So not only can these guys be kept unheated, but you don't have to alter your water that much either. So in Australia, I think the tap water here is around 7 to 7.5 in pH, just straight out of the tap. So if you just put a little bit of dechlorinator in that and then throw that in your aquarium, they can thrive in that perfectly fine. But as for diet for these guys, they will eat practically anything you throw in there. So things like live foods, frozen foods, and dry foods are all great staples in their diet. As for tank setting, you're going to want plenty of swim space, but they do also like a little bit of plant life in there as well. So if you can throw in some floating plants, they will definitely appreciate that. And then as for tank mates, these guys can be quite nippy. However, if you do get the long fin variants like these ones here behind me, the long fins actually slow them down a bit, so you can keep them with all sorts of really cool fish. But as for your normal variants, like these regular zebra Danos here behind me, they can be a little bit nippy, so you're going to want to keep them with other fast-moving fish or relatively hardy fish. So things like Corydoras catfish, bristlenose, barbs, and tetras all make great tank mates for them. But with that said, Danos are another great addition into any nano aquarium as a schooling fish, and I definitely would recommend them. However, that is going to bring us to the end of today's video, so I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope I helped you guys find a brand new nano schooling fish for your aquarium. If you did enjoy today's video and you haven't done so already, please make sure to go down and subscribe. And while you're down there, smash the like button and comment your thoughts on today's video. I always love going down there and reading them all, and I try to reply back to as many as I can. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in that next video.